Tell me honestly, how long is a woman supposed to pretend she never notices that her husband is the least impressive man in every room? I married Ethan before I met the people he grew up with, and that was my mistake, not my crime. His best friend Raphael had the confidence, humor, and attention Ethan had stopped giving me years ago. So when I sent Ethan to the store during our party, I was not trying to destroy my marriage. I was giving myself one private chance to discover whether I had chosen the wrong man. Ethan only picked up the blue shopping bag and smiled that tired little smile he used whenever he was too weak to challenge me. By the time he returned, I expected to have my answer. Would you call a woman disloyal just because she finally admitted she chose too fast? My name is Delaney Brooks. I am 32, and I work in public relations. I was trying to be honest about a choice everyone expected me to carry forever. Ethan had become the safe man, while his best friend Raphael was the kind people noticed. Of course, Ethan answered every difficult moment with the same tired smile, as if silence could make him stronger. I had decided that one day I would stop pretending stability was enough. Every Sunday, Ethan and I went to a roadside diner with cracked red seats and burned coffee. He ordered pancakes for both of us because I always changed my mind after seeing his plate. But Ethan believed love was a list of completed jobs. If I asked whether he still found me attractive, he reminded me that he had changed my tires. If I said I felt lonely, he pointed out that he came home every night. Of course, he was loyal. So was our dining table. That did not mean either of them knew how to make me feel wanted. I met most of his friends only after we were engaged. Ethan took me to a summer cookout at Mark's house, proud to introduce me to the people he called his second family. Ethan stayed near the grill, checking the chicken and asking whether anyone needed another chair. Then Raphael arrived. He was not the most handsome man I had ever seen, but he understood attention. When someone spoke, he looked at them. When I made a joke, he laughed without checking whether anyone else did. He asked about my job and remembered the name of a hotel campaign I mentioned. Ethan had heard me discuss it for weeks and still called it the Beach Project. That night, Chloe asked which of Ethan's friends I liked most. I told her Raphael was the only one who looked like he had chosen his own life. She laughed and said I should have inspected the whole friend group before taking the first offer. It was a joke then. That was what I called it. Over the next few years, I repeated versions of it whenever we were together. I said Ethan was the man a woman married after she got tired of exciting men. I said Raphael was the man women noticed first, while Ethan was the man they called when their car made a strange sound. People usually laughed. Ethan sometimes did too. At one dinner, Raphael arrived late in a dark jacket, and two women at the bar turned to look at him. I told the table that if Ethan had introduced me to his friends before proposing, our seating arrangement might have been different. The laughter came late and thin. Ethan gave that small smile. Then he looked at Raphael. Raphael set down his glass and looked away. I assumed they were embarrassed because I had said something true. Men claim they want honesty until a woman compares them honestly. On the drive home, Ethan asked when my jokes about Raphael had stopped being jokes. His voice was calm, almost curious. I told him nothing had changed and that he was creating a problem because he felt insecure. He asked whether I would find it harmless if he said he wished he had met Chloe before me. That comparison annoyed me. Chloe was my friend, but she was not better than me. Raphael was clearly better than Ethan in several ways. Pretending all attraction was equal was another way to avoid uncomfortable facts. I told Ethan that confident husbands did not monitor harmless jokes. He went quiet and folded the blue reusable shopping bag left on the back seat. He kept it in the truck because I forgot bags whenever I sent him to the store. Then he smiled again and said he only wanted to understand what had changed. I heard weakness in that question. A stronger man would have demanded an answer. After that, I became more careful around Ethan, but not around Chloe. I explained that marriage should not erase a woman's ability to notice better options. I was not planning an affair. I only wanted proof that I had not settled. Chloe said Raphael watched me when he thought nobody noticed. A week later, Ethan fell asleep beside me. I opened my messages and found Raphael's name. I told him I sometimes wondered what would have happened if I had met him before Ethan. The message showed as read. Raphael did not answer. Of course, I did not take silence as rejection. I had lived with Ethan long enough to believe men became quiet when they wanted something they were afraid to admit. Raphael finally answered my message the next morning, but not in the way I expected. He asked what I meant by wondering about a life with him. It was a careful question, almost formal, yet I read it as interest. A man who felt nothing would have ignored me or told Ethan immediately. Raphael wanted details. Of course, he was too loyal to admit why. I told him I was not asking for promises. I only wanted to know whether he had ever looked at me and thought Ethan had been lucky to meet me first. Raphael replied that luck was not the issue. He wanted to know whether I was unhappy enough to leave my marriage or only unhappy enough to imagine another man. The question stayed on my screen for several minutes. It sounded like a challenge. I told him I had spent 6 years being useful to Ethan and almost none of them feeling desired. Raphael asked whether Ethan knew that. I said Ethan knew everything that mattered, but he preferred fixing doors to fixing conversations. That was honest. Ethan could spend an entire Saturday repairing a loose step on the porch, yet if I asked why he had not touched me with real affection in weeks, he would mention work, bills, or how tired he was. He treated emotions like broken appliances. If he could not identify the damaged part, he left them alone. My messages with Raphael became part of my routine. Morning coffee, lunch break, late evening, after Ethan fell asleep. I sent Raphael photographs of hotel events I organized and asked which dress looked better. He usually chose one without adding the compliments I wanted, but restraint can be its own kind of flirting. I told Chloe every detail. She said Raphael was trying to protect himself until he knew I was serious. According to her, confident men did not chase married women. They waited for those women to make the choice. That explanation suited me, so I kept it. At Ethan's birthday dinner, Raphael sat across from us. I touched his wrist while reaching for the bread and left my hand there 1 second longer than necessary. He looked down at it, then at Ethan. Ethan was speaking to his sister and did not appear to notice. Raphael moved his hand away. Later, he asked whether I was trying to make Ethan jealous. I told him Ethan was not jealous because he had become too comfortable. Raphael asked what I wanted him to do if Ethan ever noticed. I said there was nothing to notice. We were friends. Adults were allowed to have chemistry without turning it into a crime. Raphael did not answer for the rest of the night. 2 days later, Ethan placed his phone beside my coffee cup while I was getting ready for work. My message to Raphael was open on the screen. It was the one where I had written that marrying Ethan before meeting the whole group felt like buying the first dress without checking the rest of the store. Ethan asked why I had sent that sentence to his best friend at 1:14 in the morning. His voice was controlled and specific. No accusations. No raised volume. He wanted an explanation tied to one message and one time. That irritated me more than shouting would have. I asked whether Raphael had started reporting every joke I made. Ethan said Raphael had shown him only that message because he believed it crossed a line. I told Ethan the line existed only because 2 insecure men had decided to draw it around me. He asked whether I would accept him sending Chloe messages about choosing the wrong wife. I said that comparison was childish. Chloe had never offered him anything I did not. Raphael did. Ethan looked at me for a long time, then gave that small, tired smile. I knew the expression well. It appeared whenever he reached the end of an argument and had nothing strong enough to say. He picked up the blue shopping bag from the counter and folded it twice before placing it in the cabinet. Then he asked whether I still wanted to be married to him. I told him he was turning one private joke into a marriage crisis because admitting Raphael was more attractive hurt his pride. Ethan said the question had not been about Raphael. I shut the bedroom door before he could explain further. For the next week, Ethan became quieter. He still made coffee before work. He still filled my car when the fuel light came on. He still asked whether I needed anything from the store, but the soft parts of him disappeared. No hand at my back when we passed in the hallway. No message asking whether I arrived safely. No Sunday diner. Of course, I blamed him for creating distance after accusing me of wanting distance. Raphael also changed. His replies became more precise. He stopped reacting to jokes and began asking direct questions. Did I want to leave Ethan? Had I told anyone else how I felt? Was I expecting Raphael to choose me if my marriage ended? Each question made me more certain he was considering the possibility. Why else would he need such clear answers? I told him I had not decided what I wanted because I had never been given a real chance to compare. He replied that people were not products. I said that was easy for a man to say when he had never wondered whether he had settled. Chloe laughed when I showed her. She said Raphael was already imagining the consequences, which meant he had imagined being with me. Her confidence fed mine. Soon after that, Mark announced another end-of-summer party at his house. 2 floors. A crowded backyard. Music loud enough to cover private conversations. I checked the guest list and saw Raphael's name. Ethan planned to go too, but that did not worry me. Ethan was useful at parties. Mark always pulled him toward the grill or asked him to repair something. I only needed one reason to send him away for 30 minutes. By the time I closed the invitation, I already knew which store was far enough from Mark's house and what brand Ethan would believe I needed. The party at Mark's house was already loud when Ethan and I arrived. Music came through the open windows, smoke from the grill hung over the backyard, and plastic cups covered every table. I had spent almost an hour choosing my dress because I wanted Raphael to notice the difference between the woman I was beside Ethan and the woman I could have been with someone else. Ethan carried 2 cases of drinks from the truck while I walked ahead of him. Of course, nobody noticed the man carrying everything when there were more interesting people near the door. Raphael was standing beside Mark under the patio lights. He wore a dark shirt with the sleeves folded to his elbows, and he looked comfortable in the center of the group without asking for attention. His eyes moved toward me when I entered the yard. He held my gaze for a second, then looked at Ethan behind me. I decided that hesitation meant guilt. Ethan greeted him warmly and placed one hand on his shoulder. Watching them together only confirmed what I had always believed. Raphael looked like a man who chose things. Ethan looked like a man who carried them. Chloe arrived 20 minutes later and pulled me toward the outdoor drink table. She asked whether I planned to do anything or spend another night watching Raphael from across the yard. I told her I was not chasing anyone. I only wanted one honest conversation without Ethan standing nearby. Chloe said opportunities did not wait for married women to become brave. I laughed, but I poured another drink. 1 glass, then a second. I counted because I wanted to remain in control. Raphael spoke to different people, but he checked his phone more than usual. Each time he looked down at the screen, I assumed he was deciding whether to message me. Ethan stayed busy. Mark asked him to check a loose wire near the outdoor speaker, then someone needed help moving a cooler, and later Ethan disappeared into the kitchen to find more plates. This was why people liked having him around. He was useful, reliable, almost invisible. Raphael came over while I was standing near the back steps. He asked whether I was enjoying myself. I told him I would enjoy the night more if he stopped acting as if speaking to me required Ethan's permission. Raphael asked whether that was what I thought he had been doing. I said his messages had become so careful that they sounded like questions from an interview. He looked toward the kitchen door and asked what answer I wanted from him. I told him I wanted him to admit that he had considered me, not as Ethan's wife, as a woman. Raphael did not answer directly. He asked what I planned to do if he said yes. That question was enough. A man does not ask about consequences unless he has pictured the choice. Before I could respond, Ethan returned carrying the blue shopping bag. Mark had run out of ice, and the kitchen counter was missing several items for the food. I saw the opportunity before anyone else did. I told Ethan the nearby store did not carry the sparkling water I liked and asked him to drive to the larger supermarket across town. Then I added limes, chips, and a specific sauce Mark supposedly needed. Ethan looked at the list on my phone. He asked whether all of it was necessary. I told him Mark was already stressed and that helping would take less time than questioning me. Ethan gave me the same tired smile. He folded the top of the blue bag over his hand and said he would go. Before leaving, he looked at Raphael. Raphael held his gaze. Neither of them spoke. I assumed Ethan was silently warning his friend away from me. It almost made me laugh. Warnings only matter when the person receiving them wants to obey. I waited until Ethan's truck disappeared at the end of the street. 5 minutes. Then 7. I found Raphael near the side gate and told him we could finally speak without being watched. He asked whether Ethan knew I had sent him away for that reason. I said Ethan had gone shopping because that was what he was good at. Raphael's expression changed, but he followed me inside. The hallway was quieter than the backyard. I could still hear the bass through the walls, but every step upstairs separated us from the party below. Raphael stopped near the guest room door and asked whether I was certain. I told him certainty was the reason I had brought him there. Inside, the room smelled like clean sheets and the candle Mark's wife kept on the dresser. Raphael remained near the door. I sat on the edge of the bed and told him to stop behaving as if I had dragged him upstairs. He asked what I wanted from him. I told him what I had wanted since the first night we met. I wanted to know whether I had married the wrong friend. Raphael asked whether I would really leave Ethan if he chose me. I said I could not promise to leave without knowing what I was leaving for. That was not cruelty. It was common sense. People compare houses before moving. They compared jobs before resigning. Why was marriage supposed to be the only choice a woman could never examine again? Raphael sat beside me, leaving space between us. He checked his phone once and placed it face down on the bed. I moved closer. He asked how much I had been drinking. I told him enough to stop lying, not enough to forget what I wanted. When I placed my hand against his chest, he did not touch me back, but he did not stand either. I told him Ethan would be gone for at least 40 minutes. Raphael asked whether I had planned the shopping list before the party. I smiled and said good opportunities usually looked accidental to everyone except the person smart enough to create them. I leaned toward him. He turned his face slightly and asked whether I wanted Ethan or only the life Ethan had built around me. The question annoyed me. I told him Ethan had built a house, not a marriage. Raphael glanced toward the door. Then his phone vibrated once beneath his hand. He did not check it. I caught the front of his shirt and tried to pull him closer. The door opened before he moved. Ethan stood in the hallway holding the blue shopping bag. Behind him were Mark, Ethan's sister, Chloe, and several people from the backyard. Nobody spoke. Ethan did not look at me first. He looked at Raphael. Raphael stood and gave him one small nod. I could already see what the silence would allow them to assume, so I said they had misunderstood the situation. Ethan placed the shopping bag on the floor. A jar inside struck the wood with a dull sound. He gave me that tired little smile, turned around, and walked back downstairs as if I were no longer worth asking a single question. The silence upstairs lasted only a few seconds, but it gave everyone enough time to decide what they had seen. Chloe stood behind Ethan with one hand covering her mouth. Mark stared at the floor. Ethan's sister, Lauren, looked directly at my hand, which was still holding the front of Raphael's shirt. I released him and stood, explaining that Raphael and I had come upstairs because the music was too loud for a private conversation. Raphael moved away from the bed without supporting me. That irritated me more than Ethan's entrance. Raphael had followed me upstairs. He had sat beside me. He had asked what I wanted. Now he was letting the room treat him like an innocent witness. I told Ethan that bringing people upstairs had been cruel and calculated. He did not answer. He picked up the blue shopping bag, checked the jar that had fallen against the floor, and walked downstairs. His tired smile remained on his face. Of course, I understood what he was doing. He wanted silence to make him look dignified because he could not win the argument with words. I followed him into the backyard and asked why he had turned a private misunderstanding into a public performance. The music had been lowered, and people who had not gone upstairs were watching us from the patio. Ethan said he had returned because Raphael told him I had invited him into the guest room. He spoke quietly. No accusation, no raised voice. That calm allowed everyone else to listen. I said Raphael had misunderstood me and that nothing had happened. Ethan asked whether I had created the shopping list before the party. I told him the question did not matter because buying groceries was not permission to spy on me. Ethan looked at the people around us and asked whether anyone had forced me to send him away. Nobody spoke. I turned toward Raphael and asked him to tell them that we had only talked. Raphael said I had asked whether I married the wrong friend and tried to turn that question into something physical. His words were careful, almost rehearsed. I accused him of encouraging me so Ethan could catch us. Raphael asked what he had promised me. I could not name anything. He had never said he wanted me. He had only kept asking what I wanted from him. That did not make him innocent, but it made my version harder to sell. I left before Ethan did. Chloe drove me to her apartment while I called my mother, 2 friends, and Ethan's cousin. Public relations teaches one useful rule. The first clear story usually survives longer than the complicated truth. I explained that Ethan had become jealous of my friendship with Raphael and arranged a humiliating test. I admitted that I went upstairs, but I described it as a private attempt to calm Raphael after an argument. That was my controlled truth. Enough honesty to sound believable, not enough to make me guilty. Chloe agreed that the setup had been extreme, though her support sounded weaker than it had before the party. She kept asking why my hand had been on Raphael's shirt. I told her she was focusing on one image instead of the full situation. One room. One hand. One bad angle. People destroy marriages over less because they enjoy having a villain. By morning, I had posted a short message about men who create traps instead of communicating. I did not name Ethan, but everyone knew. Several women from work sent supportive reactions. Mark did not. Lauren did not. Raphael did not even view it. Around noon, Lauren called me. Her voice was flat. She asked whether I still believed Ethan had invented the problem. I told her he had turned insecurity into theater. Lauren then repeated the exact sentence I had once sent Raphael about marrying the first dress without checking the rest of the store. She also knew I had called Ethan the least attractive man in his own friend group. Those words had never been spoken at the party. They came from private messages. I asked whether Raphael was sending my conversations around to protect himself. Lauren said Ethan had defended me even after Raphael showed him the first message. She said her brother had spent weeks insisting I was only frustrated and that Raphael had misunderstood my humor. That detail almost opened something I did not want to examine. Ethan had not been waiting to catch me because he hated me. He had been waiting because he still expected me to stop. I closed the thought by reminding myself that good husbands did not test their wives. They talked to them. Ethan had failed at talking for years. That evening, he came home while I was packing a bag. He moved through the house without asking where I was going. He collected work folders from the office, his grandfather's photographs from the hallway, and the dog's medical records from a drawer. At the unfinished wall near the stairs, he stopped. We had removed the old wallpaper months earlier and planned to paint the space together. Ethan touched one rough strip of plaster and lowered his head. For a second, he looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with work. I almost asked whether he wanted to sit down and speak without Raphael, Chloe, or an audience. Then he gave me that small smile again, and I decided the sadness was another performance. I accused him of enjoying the way everyone had looked at me. Ethan said he had spent years defending me from things he should have believed. I told him he had stopped being a husband long before I looked at Raphael. I said paying bills and repairing steps did not make a woman feel chosen. Ethan did not deny it. He admitted that he had treated stability as proof of love because he did not know how to say what he felt. Then he asked why his failure gave me the right to replace him with someone he considered family. I told him I had not replaced anyone because nothing had happened. Ethan looked at the packed bag by my feet and said that was the problem with me. I believed the betrayal only counted after the last boundary, while everyone else had watched me cross the first 10. I said I would stay with Chloe until he stopped punishing me. Ethan moved aside and let me pass. No argument. No request to stay. Only that tired smile. At Chloe's apartment, I sent Raphael 3 messages. I told him Ethan had manipulated both of us, that I understood why he had panicked, and that we could speak once the attention faded. The first message was delivered. The second remained unread. The third did not go through. Raphael had blocked me. 5 days passed without Ethan asking me to come home. He did not call Chloe's apartment, send flowers, or appear outside my office with one of those practical apologies men give when they cannot admit they are afraid. He did not even respond to the message I sent, saying we could discuss the marriage once he accepted how cruel the party setup had been. His silence became the loudest part of every day. Of course, I understood what he was trying to do. Ethan had never known how to fight for me, so now he was waiting for guilt to bring me back. I refused to reward that kind of weakness. Raphael had blocked me, but I considered that temporary. He was protecting his friendship and waiting for the attention to fade. A man did not follow a woman upstairs, sit beside her on a bed, and ask whether she would leave her husband unless some part of him wanted the answer. He had become frightened when Ethan brought witnesses. That was all. Chloe was less certain. She stopped bringing up Raphael and changed the subject whenever I described what he might do next. One evening, she asked whether I had considered that he had never touched me or promised me anything. I told her she was repeating Ethan's version because it was easier than admitting 2 men had planned to embarrass me. Chloe said she had watched me send Ethan away. I reminded her that she was the one who told me opportunities did not wait forever. She returned to her bedroom without answering. Her retreat annoyed me, but I did not need her approval. I needed the social circle to understand what had actually happened. At work, I spent my days controlling stories for hotels after guests posted angry reviews or photographs without context. The same method applied here. People did not need every detail. They needed one clear explanation repeated with confidence. I wrote a longer public statement. I said Ethan had used his best friend to test my loyalty because he had become obsessed with comparing himself to Raphael. I admitted that I went upstairs, but explained that Raphael had encouraged a private conversation and then helped Ethan create a public scene. I wrote that a secure husband would have spoken to his wife instead of building a trap around her. Before posting it, I counted the paragraphs. 4. Enough to sound thoughtful, not desperate. The reactions came quickly. A few women called the test manipulative. One former co-worker said marriages could not survive surveillance. Several people sent private messages saying they hoped I was safe. I read those messages twice and decided the story had begun moving in my direction. Mark did not react. Lauren removed me from a family group chat. Raphael remained silent. Ethan said nothing at all. His refusal to defend himself looked like surrender. The next afternoon, a message appeared in the shared friends group. Ethan invited everyone to a fresh start barbecue at our house on Saturday. He wrote that there would be no arguments, only food and closure. I smiled when I read it. Ethan had finally understood that private silence would not repair the way people saw us. He needed to stand in front of everyone, admit the test had gone too far, and ask me to return. I began planning my response before I finished reading the invitation. I would arrive calm. I would let him speak first. When he apologized, I would explain that forgiveness required time. I wanted Raphael there too. He needed to watch Ethan choose me after everything. Then he would understand that I was not a woman men could use and discard. I bought a fitted cream dress that Ethan had once said made me look impossible to ignore. I scheduled my hair, changed my nails, and wrote several versions of what I would say. Chloe watched from the couch while I held the dress against myself. I asked whether she would stand beside me at the barbecue. She said she would check her schedule. Chloe had no plans on Saturday. We both knew that. The night before the gathering, Ethan asked to meet me outside the roadside diner where we used to spend Sunday mornings. The red seats were visible through the window, but he did not suggest going inside. He stood beside his truck, holding the folded blue shopping bag. His face looked thinner. He asked me to tell him the complete truth before the barbecue. No performance, no audience. Just one honest account of why I had sent him away and what I expected Raphael to do upstairs. I told him I had already admitted my part. Ethan said I had admitted the location but changed the intention. He asked once more whether I had planned the store trip to create time alone with Raphael. I told him the larger problem was that he had stopped making me feel like a woman years earlier. He made me feel like another item on his list. Mortgage, repairs, groceries, wife. That was true, and Ethan could not deny it. He lowered his eyes and said he had confused providing with loving. He admitted that silence was easier for him than facing the possibility that I was unhappy. Then he asked why I had chosen his best friend instead of choosing to leave honestly. I told him a stronger husband would never have needed another man to test his wife. Ethan gave me that same tired smile. I expected an argument, but his voice became even quieter. He said Saturday was my last opportunity to tell the truth before he handled everything properly. I told him there was nothing left for him to handle. Everyone already understood what he and Raphael had done. Ethan folded the blue bag once, placed it on the passenger seat, and closed the truck door. I became louder as he became calmer. I said he would apologize in front of everyone. I said Raphael would admit his part. I said I would decide whether our marriage deserved another chance. Ethan only smiled. Back at Chloe's apartment, I sent her a message confirming what time we would leave. She did not respond. By Saturday afternoon, I was driving toward my house alone, wearing the cream dress and rehearsing exactly how gracious I would look when Ethan asked me to come home. Cars lined both sides of our street when I arrived, which confirmed what I already believed. Ethan had invited everyone because he needed an audience for his apology. I parked where he could see me step out in the cream dress and walked toward the house slowly. The front curtains were gone. Through the windows, I could see bare walls and an empty living room. At first, I assumed Ethan had moved the furniture to make space for the gathering, but every step inside echoed. The sofa was gone. The television was gone. Even the framed diner photograph from our hallway had disappeared. Voices came from the backyard. A small grill stood near the fence, and our friends were gathered around one folding table. Ethan stood at the far end with Raphael beside him. Chloe was not there. The blue shopping bag sat alone in the center of the table. I asked what Ethan had done to our house. He gave me the tired smile I had watched for 6 years, but it did not look weak anymore. He said Raphael had warned him months earlier, beginning with the message where I compared marrying him to buying the first dress in a store. Ethan had defended me. When Raphael showed him the late-night messages, Ethan said I was frustrated. When Raphael told him I touched him at gatherings, Ethan said I was naturally affectionate. Even after Raphael suggested the test, Ethan believed I would stop before crossing the final line. Raphael placed his phone on the table. My messages filled the screen. The invitation upstairs. The statement that Ethan would be gone for 40 minutes. The question about whether I had married the wrong friend. Raphael said he had never promised me anything. He had only stopped protecting me from my own choices. Ethan reminded everyone of the moment at the party when he looked at Raphael and received one small nod. I had thought they were judging me. The nod had meant Raphael had not initiated anything. I told them that a test was still manipulation and that Raphael had encouraged me by following me upstairs. Mark asked one quiet question. He wanted to know who invented the shopping trip. My hand remained on the back of an empty patio chair. Nobody answered for me. Ethan then explained the house. His grandfather's inheritance had paid for it before our marriage, and my name had never been added to the deed. He had accepted an offer from a young couple and sold most of the furniture after I chose to leave. The closing was scheduled for Monday. I said he could not erase 6 years because of one misunderstanding. Ethan said the empty house was not punishment for one night. It was the result of every time I treated him like the temporary man holding my place until someone better arrived. Raphael opened our private conversation and showed the messages I sent after the party, including the one where I told him Ethan would eventually apologize and then asked when Raphael planned to choose me. Raphael locked his phone, handed Ethan the spare house key, and walked toward the driveway without looking at me. Ethan stated that the divorce petition had been filed and that I had 10 days to collect the remaining boxes. I rented a furnished apartment above a pharmacy because I could not return to the house. The separate inheritance left me with less money than I had included in the future I imagined. Lauren stopped answering. Mark removed me from the group chat, and Chloe sent one message saying she needed distance. Raphael never contacted me again and remained beside Ethan in every photograph people posted afterward. At work, nobody mentioned my public statement, but conversations became quieter whenever I entered the break room. I had believed keeping Raphael close gave me another option. I believed Ethan would remain where I left him because safe men were supposed to wait. What I called freedom depended on one man protecting my life while I checked whether another man wanted it. Ethan had not been the worst choice in the room. He had been the reason I belonged in that room at all. Inside the blue shopping bag were my spare key, 2 photographs, and the loyalty card from our Sunday diner. The blue shopping bag was the only thing Ethan left for me, and even that was empty.